Hello, everyone. Hold on just a moment. We are live, and I'm going to make sure I connect to Instagram. So hold on just 1 second. There we go. Hi. Well, welcome to this final episode of season 1 of Dr. Velma Talks. I'm so glad I had an opportunity to talk to you all today. So I hope that you have a good time. Again, this is our conversation. This is your conversation with me. I'm live today so that in case you have any questions, you want to put some comments in the comment section, you can. For those of you who are listening to the audible version, I understand that you can't post, but you can always go over to my page on LinkedIn, on YouTube, and make comments later. So for those of you who are live with me, I just want you to know that I'm Dr. Velma Bagby. I'm a best-selling and award-winning Christian author. I'm a certified dating and relationship coach and ordained minister, speaker, and a woman married 50 blessed years. And as your podcast host, I'm looking forward to being as transparent with you as possible. So welcome. Again, this is the final segment of season 1 of Dr. Velma Talks. Woo-hoo-hoo-hoo! I'll return again in July next year, 2025, and we'll take this through October. But here, I'm going to leave you with a nugget, and I expect an assignment, and I hope that you will achieve that assignment. So I'm looking forward to hearing more from you. So here's what I want you to know. This is what we've done through these episodes. In all of the books, you'll see much of what we talked about was highlighted in the fictional stories. I gave you real examples of what happens when you date incorrectly. Lots of examples of that. Showed you the behavior of the men that the women dated in book 3. I showed you the behavior of the women that the men dated in the book that's She'll Tear Down the House. That was for the men. And then book 4 is the Book of Fools. It's a nonfiction, but it gives you highlights of what foolish behavior looks like. God calls these individuals a fool, not me, but that's his definition. But I only gave you 80 references. God has over 200 in the scriptures. So all of those are intended to help you to date smart, to use a new strategy other than high school dating methods, which is pretty much fall in love with everything you see on the outside without knowing anything about who this person is really. And during the last episode, I referenced a movie that was, I believe it was produced in 2020 by Tyler Perry, and it was entitled A Fall from Grace. Let me make sure I have the title correctly. Let's see. I think it said A Fall from Grace. If I get it wrong, I'll go back. Yeah. The movie was called Fall from Grace, and it was by Tyler Perry. And what shocked me, first of all, was Felicia Rashad. I'd not seen her act as a devious, evil woman. And in this movie, she does. But the woman does the exact thing that I talk about with falling and getting captivated by what the guy says, how he moves, how he acts, how he behaves. He acted like a gentleman at first, but she did nothing, zero, blank, to look at what were the actual behaviors of this man. What was at the center of his heart? She didn't look at any of those things. So that was the sad part. So I just want you to know that I wanted to share that movie because my husband and I just recently saw it. I didn't see it in 2020. We saw it pop up as an option. And when we watched it, I said, oh my gosh, this movie shows you everything I've been talking about why we get ourselves into trouble. She dated a stranger, which is what I call it. When you date a stranger, you're not taking the time to really get to know who this person is really. And I remember on Listen Linda's podcast, I was asked a question about what do I think about social media, and we kind of had a conversation around it. And we both agreed social media is not the place for you to do an examination. Yeah, go and look, but remember, there's a lot of falsehood on social media. That's my daughter's dog back there. That's Nike, and so I just want you to know that movie, if you get a chance, I'd like for you to watch that movie. I'd like for you to watch it and then come back and post in the comments what you learned, because it's so true. And then as believers, we're supposed to trust God for everything. We are supposed to believe, but God also expects you to use what he's giving you. You prayed throughout. God, show me the red flags. God, reveal what I need to see. Let me do my work, my due diligence, and really look and help me to find whatever I need to know about this person. You should be doing that. And why we want to blame God when it turns out wrong, when you didn't do what you were supposed to do. You didn't do your due diligence and really examine this person closely. So we did we talked a lot about these things, and I thought about that movie and I wanted to bring that back to your attention. So we learned that in the beginning, you must believe. You're wasting your time as a believer if you don't believe. And when you believe, you should be able to speak what you believe. Therefore, pray for that husband. That was one of the things I said to you. Pray for him, even though you haven't met him yet. Pray that God would cover and keep him, protect him. And when the moment is right, the two of you will cross paths. Because remember, you have work to do on your own heart as well. You don't want to bring the husband that you're asking God to bring and be the godly man of your life, and you're broken and you've got unresolved issues and you have things that you need to address. It would cause a lot of hiccups in your marriage to go into the marriage in that condition. So it's important for you to really examine your heart. And so I want you to know that that's important. And then the other thing we talked about was learning how to create your list, your husband to be prayerless. And that is to believe the list. You have to build the list, believe the list, and then you have to also trust the list as well. I'm just looking to see if I have any comments. I apologize. Hold on just a moment. You want to make sure that you build the list, create it. You want to make sure that you believe it. You have to trust and believe that God will do what he says. And then you have to do your due diligence and make sure that you are paying attention to that list as well. So that's one of the things I wanted to make. Hello, Myra. It's good to see you. I'm glad you're tuning in. So that's one of the things I wanted to make sure you remember. Let's see. What else did we talk about? We talked about the strategy not being a high school strategy, but being the strategy God has given us all along. And that is to date for marriage. When you get to this age, in the age that most of the followers are, you want to be serious about who you're examining and who you're going out with. And your whole purpose is to examine the heart of the person. You've learned about being healthy yourself, making sure you're dealing with some of the challenges you have, so that when he comes, you know that he's not coming to make you happy. You're already happy. You know that he's not coming to complete you. You're already complete in Christ. God makes us brand new. Anyone in Christ is a new creature. Old things have passed away, and behold, all things have become new. So you want to make sure that he's not coming to fix you either. If you're broken and you have some past that you need to address, you need to deal with that before he arrives. Because remember, Proverbs 18:22, I'm going to read the NCV version. When a man finds a wife, he finds something good. There's twice that God refers to women as good. So don't ever consider yourself as something bad. God called you good when he looked at Adam and saw that he was out there alone, completing the charge that he had given him. Adam wasn't lonely. It never says that. He had fellowship with God in the garden, but it was God who made the determination. It is not good for man to be alone. He meant it then, and he means it today. And so therefore, it was he that called you the good, because he said, let me create a companion for him. You were the good that would satisfy the situation that was not good with Adam. So that's twice God called you, us women, good, back in the garden. And then here in Proverbs 18:22, when a man finds a wife, he finds something good. She's good all the time, 24/7. So there you go. You are good. It shows that it also completes by saying it shows the Lord is pleased with him. So remember, he's praying too. He's asking for the mate that God has for him too. So pray for him as well. So when he finds, that word in the original language means when he meets her. And I can tell you, in my very first book, I interviewed some couples and wanted to find out if this particular part was true. It was for my husband and I, but I wanted to find out from other couples. And so in my very first book, Your Adam is Asleep Until God Opens His Eyes, I validated in many of the couples I interviewed, I asked them, how did it happen? And you'll find in every story, it wasn't until the man's eyes opened to the person that he knew that this was his mate. So keep in mind that when you begin dating and going out and applying the strategy dating for marriage, and you're using the questions that you should ask, because you remember you're examining who this person is. And I have a list of questions. I love this list that was given by crosswalk.com. If you go to crosswalk.com, they have what's called 50 questions to ask before you fall in love. It's kind of my same message. So I love their questions. I wrote to them to ask if I can share them, and they agreed that I could. So I'm grateful that I can share. I'm going to be posting a sample of their questions on my website so you can have access to them. But I also ask you to Google questions to ask during premarital sessions. And the reason I say that, because you get into some real strong nitty-gritty type questions that you need to ask early on. Because remember, the whole goal is that you're examining the person before you fall in love with them. Stop falling in love like we did in high school on what we see on the outside. We were just happy he was tall, he was good looking, he liked me, he was the first one that asked me out. We looked at that kind of stuff in high school. Well, you're not in high school anymore. So you really have to ask some credible questions. Hey, thank you for joining me, Mrs. Jacqueline Cox. Thank you, Miss Wendy. It's good to see you. So this is our final episode for season 1. Woohoo! I appreciate all of you for your support. So I mentioned the movie. I'm inviting everybody. Somebody please put it in the comments section for me. Look for the movie Fall from Grace by Tyler Perry. I believe it came out in 2020. Put that movie in the comments. I want everybody who's tuning in to go and look at that movie, because it's the perfect example. It is so telling, the things that I talk about, where the woman just got captivated over what she saw. And boy, the monster came out after she married this guy, because she did nothing to really, thank you, Mrs. Cox, nothing to really examine his heart. It was so telling. And not only that, she was an older woman and married somebody young. So you got to see the end of it and what happens in it. But this is why it's so important to be careful these days and really examine. Thank you, Myra. Yes, I was shocked about Felicia Rashad. I'd never seen her play in a role where she was evil and mean and sneaky. But boy, you will see it here. Thank you, Miss Wendy. Perfect example of what we've been talking about. Stop getting caught up. She did the high school dating method at her age. So this is not age specific. There's a lot of women still making mistakes. Even after divorce, be careful as you get back out there, making sure you've cleaned up the things that you held on to from that bad relationship. Prior relationships, making sure that you do your self-examination, because you'll only attract what is in your heart. So the fact that she attracted this kind of man showed what was in her heart already. So keep that in mind. So we talked about that. Proverbs 18:22 says, when a man finds his wife, which means that when his eyes open to you. The original language says when he meets her. In every case that I examined the couples, referring back to my very first book, Your Adam is Asleep, I examined and asked and inquired of a few couples that gave me permission to put their stories in the book, because I wanted to validate. I knew that it was the same for me when my husband's eyes opened to me. We had known each other since 10th grade, but nothing happened until sometimes later after graduation. So I want you to know that his eyes had to open at the right time. And ladies, you cannot force a man's eyes to open. If you do that kind of mess, you're already creating a mess for the future for yourself. Let his eyes open. Let it be in the order that God has already designed it. When his eyes open to the one that God has for him, Then you'll know. But that does not excuse your self-examination, because he may be a perfect person to marry, but is he your person? So don't just assume because he has all these qualities, he's the one for you. Not necessarily so. Examine the heart of the man. And I want you to know that the CATCH acronym, CATCH, it stands for Christ-like characteristics. That's the first C, Christ-like characteristics. The A is at, the T is the C is core, and the last H is his or her heart. So same for the man. If you're looking for a woman, it has to be at the core of her heart. For the women, it has to be at the core of his heart. You're looking for what's at the core of this person. Who are they really? Examining. And these days we have access to all kind of background checks and things that we can validate what he says about himself. Don't put that beyond don't think that this is beyond what you can do when you're really examining the heart of a person. God, you want to trust what God is telling you, yes, but you also want to do your due diligence. It's like going into business. Before you sign on the contract, you want to research that business reputation. You want to make sure the history is what they say their history is. You want to make sure their financials is what their financials say they are. And look, money is one of the questions you're going to have to ask him at some point. Have you ever had any financial issues? And it's going to be one of the questions you need to answer. Have you ever had any financial issues? What did you do when you got into a bad place? How did you handle it? How did you come out of it? Have you ever lost a place because of finances? Maybe it was because your job fired you and you lost your income for a short time. It could be very honest reasons for it, but these are things you want to ask, because in the movie, he robbed the woman of the money she had saved in her house, had paid it off, and he fabricated some documents and went and borrowed against the house over 400 grand. And not only that, he took money from her company, robbed her of her private code because she worked for a bank, and stole 300 grand from the company. And they fired her thinking she took it. So looking at the financial history and the background and history of a man is important. Then we looked at the red flags. Is really something I always talk about. RED, retreat, extremely dangerous. I see people posting red flags on social media, on Facebook. I saw someone doing a workshop or something regarding red flags. My red is all caps, R.E.D. Retreat, extremely dangerous. Now, if you see somebody repeating that, you better send me an email, say, Dr. Velma, ooh, they're trying to pilfer your information. So mine is capital R.E.D. Red flags, retreat, extremely dangerous. And so when you begin to ask these questions, I want to share with you a couple of general questions that should happen at the very first conversation. What is your purpose or intention in dating me? Why is that hard for us to ask? What are your short-term goals? What are your long-term goals? You're trying to understand, what's his plan? Does he have a plan? What's his goal? What are your plans for this relationship? That's 4 questions. Do you know with question 1, you can stop talking to him after that answer if it's not the right answer. And look, the fact that I'm pretty, you're gorgeous, you're pretty, you're gorgeous, that doesn't work. You have to already know you're pretty and you're gorgeous. Come on, somebody. I don't see any ugly people that's listening to me right now. You're pretty and you're gorgeous. God called you good. Now, if he's using those fake responses to who you are, then that's a red flag. You already know you're pretty and gorgeous. He better come up with something more credible than that. What are your short-term goals? Well, I don't have any right now. Red, stop talking. What are your plans for this relationship? Well, I'm just here to have fun. Red, wrong answer. You sent 4 simple questions and you already know this is not the person. Move on. And don't get attached. Oh, he was good looking. Oh, he looks so nice. Oh, he talks so soft. Fictitious, fake conditions. Stop doing that. Stop looking at conditions and what's on the outside. Come on, somebody, tell me what you think about what I've said so far. Those questions, I will be posting them on my website. I was updating the handout. I've had them for a while, but I will put them on the website. They will be free to anyone who's subscribed or have already subscribed. Excuse my little Nike in the background. That's my daughter's Frenchie back there. So I want you to know those are some of the things I wanted to make sure we covered today, that we look at why it's important. And I want to end today with a dare for all of you. For those of you who are looking, and those you know are looking, are waiting for that person to come into their lives. You must. Here's your dare. I dare you to apply what God has given us in these episodes and trust that he does something as a result. I dare you. That's my dare. I dare you to trust God. I had to trust him. I wasn't looking for anybody. I was busy establishing my career, going to school at night. The first thing I wanted to do after I graduated was go to school at night. I knew I wasn't going to go full time because I needed to get off of my mother's payroll. That was my goal. My mother raised 7 children. And I thought the least I could do is at least remove myself from her payroll and be responsible for myself. That she had 2 more children after me. So that was my goal. So I wasn't focused on trying to find anyone. I was focused on establishing my career. And because I began at the age of 18 working for the state of California, that was the job I retired from after working up the ranks to become a deputy administrator. I retired after 38 years back in 2012. So I want you to know that that was my goal. I wasn't looking for Pastor Bruce. I wasn't looking for anyone. So that's my story. I want you to understand that you have goals even now. Don't be so consumed about discovering a mate. I love the fact that I know some of you are working on books, doing other things, building your brand. Some married couples are building brands too. I see online, Mrs. Cox and the Cox family. I know that there are other things. And some of you are single and probably saying, I'm not going to find anyone. No, you're not, because it's in your mouth. See, faith comes by hearing, but faith activates when it comes out of your mouth. Notice that whenever someone came to Jesus and asked for healing or asked for his help, he said, well, he would ask them, well, do you believe? It was important for that to come out of your mouth. Even our salvation, it's not until, yes, it's true that God can save us. Yes, it's true that he would wipe away all your past the moment you accept him. But guess what it requires? If thou would confess with your mouth the Lord Jesus, it has to come out of your mouth. It's not enough for you to say, yeah, Lord, I believe you have a husband for me. Yeah, Lord, I believe this is going to happen. Until it comes out of your mouth. God, I'm waiting on you. So what I'm saying to you is everything I've talked about and written about in my books and what I've talked about on the episodes not only applies to your dating life, it applies to everything. So I hope you got that. These practices that I talk about, it applies to everything. I remember I was waiting. I had to learn how to do this. I was waiting on God to make a change in my husband. And it was something about my husband I had to bring before the Lord because, see, we can't nag the change. Nagging won't bring the change out. It'll cause a change, but it won't be the change that you want. I had to pray for him. And I remember it took 15 years, but it wasn't the time that it took for God to change him, because God can speak in an instant in your situation. It's already done. But it goes back to waiting on the Lord. In the process of waiting, we're building our faith muscles. God is changing us, because who he changed first was me. He was working on my heart the whole time I was waiting for my change to manifest. He was working in me, on me, because the man that God was, the thing that God was getting ready to change would affect me too. So he had to make sure I was where I needed to be first. He didn't become a pastor overnight. So God had to change me first. And that's why I talk to you all about self-examination first. Be the best version of yourself that you can present. Honor God in making those changes in you. And that's you telling God, God, I'm making the changes because I know you have a person for me. I'm not going to sit in my misery. I'm not going to sit around and speak the wrong things, because many of the things we experience, you are experiencing because you've been speaking it the whole time. God gives you the authority to speak blessings and curses. Now, what are you doing with your life? I don't say that. I don't say that word in those words anymore. It always, this never, I don't say those. God, I know that this hasn't happened yet, but it will happen because I'm believing you to do it. You have to speak that out of your mouth. Can I just help somebody today? 15 years. I didn't count up the time. When I waited for my second child, it was 12 years, almost 13 years. When she arrived, it was 13 years. I thought, okay, God, what am I doing? I went to the sessions that they had back then. They really didn't have credible doctors back then when I was expecting to have a child. So the little test that they gave me, oh, nothing's wrong with you, Mrs. Bagman. I said, well, you know what, God, I'm just going to have to trust you. And I began to say, well, at least I have one child, God. There's some women out there haven't had their first one. So I began to pray the Hannah prayer. And then I stopped myself from praying the Hannah prayer. And I said, God, I can't pray the Hannah prayer because Hannah didn't have any children. I have one. So I'm going to change mine. And thank you for the one child I have. And if it be your will, we will have another child. I had the flu later on that year. At least I thought it was the flu. And it was my daughter who told me, she was 13, Mom, you need to go and take a pregnancy test. Tells you how times had changed. We had to go into the doctor's office to take a pregnancy test. And then they put it in a box. I took that test and little Taylor Bagby was on the way. I want you to understand that I'm not telling you something I haven't applied in my own life. I will not speak those never ever statements. I will not speak those over my life because those are curses. I will not speak those things that I think will speak against what I'm believing God for. So I'm saying to you, this is your dare. I dare you to trust him because I stepped out and did it several times in my life. And God showed up in a way, I'm telling you, you would not expect. So I hope this encourages somebody. This is my dare. Will you trust him? Not only in your mate, but will you trust him for anything you're waiting for God to do in your life? I trust him, and I dare you to do the same. Look, this is Dr. Velma Talks. I thank you all for joining me. I appreciate you all. Believe him no matter what it looks like. Remember that train I showed you and in the caboose were all your emotions? Keep those emotions over there in the caboose. The caboose has no power, no authority. What you think, what you feel, what you see, because what you see in the natural is not the truth. Because what God ordains in the heaven will eventually manifest, but you got to trust him until it shows up. Then your natural eyes will see the truth that it really did. God did hear. God did respond. I trust in God for my Savior who would never fail. He never fails me. So I invite you to do the same. I hope to hear great things the next time we talk with each other. That's my dare to you. Trust you. Some of you are going to receive a little gift from me. I'm going to pull some names out of a hat and I will shoot over some special gifts. I don't have them in front of me, but they're my Believe cups, my Believe mugs. I'm going to send them over to you. 3 people will win them. So I want to say thank you. Thank you, Miss Wendy. You're always supportive. Thank you, Mrs. Cox. You're always supportive. Thank you, Miss Quinny, for always supporting. And Miss Myra, always being there for me. Please share, like, and share this episode. There are people out there making some terrible mistakes in their approach to dating. And if they're not dating for marriage, then what are they doing? Because you should know who this person is in just those first 4 questions I shared with you. So let's share and help people get out of the mess that they're putting themselves in. It bothers me. And that's the reason I'm passionate about helping women to become the right mate so that they can attract the right mate. Because your heart has to be right too. And it's your heart that will be attractive to him. Take care, everybody. Have a great one. Thank you for joining me today.